Civilian Friday, as we like to say around these parts. Welcome to it. This is the sheet for Friday, May the 2nd. Playoff picture, second round becoming a little bit more clear. Still a couple series to be decided. Come on, Western Conference, let's go. Yeah, Game 6 tonight. Winnipeg Jets facing off against the St. Louis Blues at Enterprise. That means we're probably going to a Game 7. He said cynically, but not wrong. St. Louis so hard to beat at home. Jim Montgomery has last change. Good luck, everybody. Looks like Nick Ehlers is back, though. More on all of this later on. And everybody's favorite series, the Dallas Stars facing off against Colorado Avalanche. That one's going 7 as well. Colorado wins last night at Ball Arena. Although Mikko Rantanen with 4 points. And yes, his goal was a triangle goal. I always appreciate everybody tweeting me and texting and DM. Triangle goal! It's almost like you should have like a triangle goal alert for this property here. Hello to everyone in the chat. Hello to everyone watching live. Hello to everybody who's listening on your favorite podcast platform. Brian Burke will be aboard this Friday after all. He's coming on in about 15 minutes time, Zach. And also Jonny Lazarus will stop by. New York issues today. Mike Sullivan, new head coach of the New York Rangers officially. And Joe Micheletti, very quietly out of nowhere, bam, drops this one yesterday, calling it a career after 19 seasons of calling New York Rangers games. So we'll talk to Laz about that, and we should probably talk to Laz about the future of the New York Rangers, both present and long-term. In the meantime, I want to get your thought on something here before we get to the daily outlines presented by our friends at FanDuel. Something that I mentioned on Sakaris and Price, which is running right now too, our competitor. Something I mentioned on Sakaris and Price today that I want to share for those that didn't get a chance to watch or listen to that excellent podcast. And that is, I was having a conversation this morning with someone from one NHL team. I was going to be like super vague about this kind of stuff. From someone from an NHL team today, because I knew I was going on S&P, and I knew they were going to ask about Quinn Hughes, and I thought they were going to ask about, and they did, the conversation that me and Wish had on Tuesday about what could a deal for Quinn Hughes look like right now. And it was an interesting conversation I had. I said, like, you know, walk me through this from like someone who like works in management in the NHL. This person is a manager in the NHL. Like, what would it look like from both sides? And let me know what you think about this, Zach. This person said to me, well, what it looks like right now is everyone gets a million miles ahead of themselves here, as Jim Rutherford has openly mused about Quinn Hughes playing with his brothers in New Jersey. Some would say that put an expiration date on a captain. I digress. He said, look, what you have right now is a classic standoff between two teams. There isn't a pressure point right now. Quinn Hughes' contract doesn't expire for a couple of seasons, and the New Jersey Devils, if they want to acquire Quinn Hughes now, will play the game of, we're not going to give you anything because we don't have to right now. We can wait this out and just get Quinn Hughes in 2 years. He said, if you're the New Jersey Devils, one of the issues that you'll have is salary cap space. So you'd be looking to get money out to bring in Quinn Hughes. And he said, if you're New Jersey, you're probably looking at something like Quinn Hughes for Dougie Hamilton and Simon Nemec. 2 defensemen, right? One with future attached, and one is Dougie Hamilton, who I still maintain 1 times a puck better than any other blue liner in the NHL. Discuss amongst yourselves. But from the Vancouver point of view, and this is where the standoff comes, and you can understand the motivation behind both. Like, they want to maximize the return for someone like Quinn Hughes. Obviously, you're not going to win a trade. You know, I think it was Sam Pollock who said, you know, whoever gets the best player in the trade wins the trade. Bobby Clark used to always mention that as well. Sure, we may have paid this and this and this, but we got the player. He said from Vancouver's point of view, it probably goes something like this. We have one of, if not the best defenseman in the NHL. Elite superstar, like legit capital S superstar. Our fans love watching this superstar play for their favorite team, the Vancouver Canucks. If we're going to make any type of deal, man, I wish Wyshynski was on right now to hear this. It would be either Nico Hischier or Jesper Bratt plus. Mm-hmm. But that's where it would start. Now, again, you can make the argument that you're not going to win that trade because you're not getting anyone of Luke Hughes' caliber back. I love Nico Hischier. I love Jesper Bratt. But what Quinn Hughes is to all the defensemen around the NHL, Nico Hischier isn't to the centers, and Jesper Bratt isn't to the wingers. That's where the plus, your prospects, your Salayevs, and your first-round picks, etc., come from. But I thought that was interesting, that's where the standoff would be right now, with what New Jersey would be offering and what the Vancouver Canucks would need. Anyhow, I just thought it was an interesting conversation to have on a Friday afternoon here on the sheet in advance of Burke and Jonny Lazarus. You have a quick thought on that one?
Yeah, I get both sides of that. The one thing that I kind of had to push back on, like, Wish was throwing out some stuff. Like, what was the name he said? He said the trade 1-for-1. Like, no, come on, Wish.
This isn't Larson
the
Hall.
Devils have all the power. Yeah, he's like, the Devils have all the power. I'm thinking of Bobby Mack tweeting that out. But
yeah.
I was like, the one thing for me that is interesting in this and where I start to understand that Vancouver side and where they could start to push back on the Devils a little bit is, sure, they could wait it out, but there's also, like, what is here in 2 years? What does the goalie look like? Maybe who is still on this team? How old are some guys? What is health? Like, some of that stuff, yeah, obviously guys will still be around and better and more mature and older, but you get 2 more years out of Quinn Hughes, you get it faster, then Vancouver can kind of turn around and say, oh, you want him that bad? Like, let's talk. And then it's more than Wish's Fantasyland 1-for-1 trade. I was laughing, like, I sit behind the scenes, obviously, there. I was just laughing when he said that. I'm like, talk about space cake. Wish was having space cake when he's saying
well, he kind of
I get it.
I love him, but he kind of has a dog in the fight as a as a New Jersey Devils fan. Not that he's not realistic about it, but at the same time, it's going to be sizable. If you want to make that deal now, and maybe Vancouver just says, like, look, no, we're keeping Quinn Hughes for the full 2 years. We're going to try to sign him, and if he ends up walking away, then you become one of those teams that say, like, okay, we accept the challenge of trying to replace that player with the salary cap space that he used to absorb. At any rate, that's kind of the way this one person described it from one team. Anyway, I just thought I'd lob that out there because it's not as if everybody, like anyone listening to this program, anyone watching this show right now, like I'll just be blunt, you're not a casual hockey fan. Like, if you're invested in anything that I'm doing here and anything that Zach is doing, like, you're a hardcore hockey fan. Like, you've searched this out. You've found this. This isn't this, like, I'm on the car, I'm flipping through the stations, and, oh, yeah, I found Marek's show. Oh, yeah, whatever, listen. Like, you are a hardcore hockey fan. So it's not as if you are not already having this conversation with all of your friends and buddies. Just thought I'd lob that out as a little bit of context, a little protein shake for you that are having these types of conversations. Anyhow, I digress. We have plenty to get to today. Daily Outline, powered by our friends and presenters here at The Sheet, and that is, of course, FanDuel. Make every moment more with North America's #1 sportsbook. The Sheet is powered by FanDuel, home of the same game parlay. Make every moment more on FanDuel, North America's #1 sportsbook app provider. And coming up on today's program, it's a biggie for guests. It's Friday, and that means Brian Burke. We will talk about Toronto. They advance. I'm not sure if you heard that. The Toronto Maple Leafs are through to the second round. So everyone is calm briefly until they face off against the Florida Panthers. And as Ken Campbell from the Hockey News wrote today, the Florida Panthers are what the Toronto Maple Leafs want to be when they grow up. Edmonton Oilers are through. Vegas Golden Knights are through. We'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about Rangers issues with Jonny Lazarus, one half of the outstanding duo that make up Morning Cup of Hockey. We'll talk about Mike Sullivan to the New York Rangers. We'll talk about Game 6 tonight between the Winnipeg Jets and the St. Louis Blues, and Game 7 tomorrow between the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars. Very much looking forward to all of it. What did you make of that Ken Campbell line, by the way? By the way, I love Kenny. He is like the, as we like to refer to him, he's the Pat Verbeek equivalent of hockey media, the little ball of hate. Just love Ken Campbell. We should probably get Kenny on the show somewhere down the road. The Florida Panthers are what the Toronto Maple Leafs want to be when they grow up. Agree or disagree on that one?
That's
Ken Campbell, baby.
Yes, but no, because I don't think anybody on this Leafs team aspires to play like that, if you get what I'm suggesting.
They can't.
There.
They
I
can't.
think that the
They can't play
management
like
group and the coach would love for them to play that way, and that in that sense, then yes, that's what they would love for them to be when they grow up.
They don't have those
I think-
players. They don't. Like,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Zach.
That's why I'm saying that his statement on this is flawed because they can't. So like that what they would like to be, it's like, okay, well, I don't know, because I don't think that some of these guys here, Matthews, Marner, Nylander, I don't think that they have that in them or
they don't
care
play
to
that
do
way.
that.
That's not their game. The old line, cows don't make ham. You cannot expect that team to play like the Florida Panthers.
Never heard that line. It's drop that in there. You know that one. You know.
Yeah,
that
come
one?
on,
Cows
Zach.
don't
You know
make
that
ham?
old one. Cows don't make ham. You know that great old saying, thank you kindly, sir, she smiled, but the money on the table, that's for the beer. You know that one, right, Zach? You know that one? No.
No, don't. I have no idea. I have not heard that one. The sentiments landed, though. I got it. I understood what you're saying. So I'm at least with you.
Congratulations to the Maple Leafs through to the second round. They'll face off against the Florida Panthers. The Edmonton Oilers, meanwhile. Like, that's... First of all, as many people have pointed out, like, I don't know what it would be like around Edmonton and around McDavid had they have lost. Oh, by the way, Tommy T writes in, but cows do make hamburgers. Good job, Tommy T. I would not like to think about what would happen. Great job in the chat. I hate to think of what would happen, what the conversation would be around Connor McDavid and his future had the Edmonton Oilers lost to the Los Angeles Kings. And if you watch those first couple of games, it was looking like that might be the reality. But you got to tip your cap. You got to absolutely tip your cap to the Edmonton Oilers, who came out and showed you what a team of will can do. And holy smokes, did the Edmonton, after a brief couple of stumbles in those opening games, that is how you close a series.
That's another thing with those guys, too, where it's like, yeah, the team of will, everybody doing that, that starts at the top. That's McDavid and Draisaitl saying, wake the fuck up. Let's start playing hockey here. Let's play the right way. Like, let's go. We're going to do it. And we're going to go out there for however long they want to put us out on the ice here tonight. And we're going to find a way to get it done. We're going to find a way to play. So are you going to join us? Are you going to get in line with it? And then they drag everyone else into the fight. So hey, kudos to them there.
Marc-Andre Fleur's career is over. The Minnesota Wild lose to the Vegas Golden Knights. And again, much like the Los Angeles Kings, there were those brief little glimmers. And again, Minnesota's going to be a different team next year. Looking forward to that. Now that they finally have the salary cap handcuffs off, playing with house money, you make the argument, but they had a chance there to really grab the momentum and go with it. But Vegas is just too veteran, too good, to all of it. And congratulations to the Vegas Golden Knights there. We'll see what happens with Winnipeg and St. Louis tonight, if that series ends or if it gets extended to a Game 7. Right now, though, this segment presented by our friends at Budweiser. Budweiser is encouraging buds to make time for the playoffs, not excuses. Every goal, every check, every win is better enjoyed with your buds. Phone a bud, text a bud, ping a bud, and call out their excuses for bailing on the playoffs. After all, the playoffs are the most wonderful time of the year. Make them count. When it's springtime, it's go time. And on Fridays, it's Brian Burke time. Burkey joins us here on the sheet for Civilian Fridays, as we like to call them around these parts. Burkey, first of all, how are you today?
Good, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, so I got a text from someone. I'm not going to say who the person's name. I'm just going to pull a random name out of the air. Let's just say this person's name was Patrick. I got a text from someone by the name of Patrick, random Patrick, who said, ask Burkey what he would have done if it were his son that pulled the stunt last week with Shedeur Sanders. So for those that don't know, the Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich, his son Jax, got hold of Sanders' cell phone number and prank called him, pretending to be the New Orleans general manager, telling him that they were going to select him in the draft. Again, this text comes from just random name Patrick. What would Brian Burke have done to his son, who may or may not sound like him? I don't know. I'll have to check the notes on that one. If his son, whose name may or may not be Patrick himself, had done that to you and got hold of a prospect's cell phone number and called him saying that you were going to be selected by Brian Burke's team.
Beat the snot out of him. I never raised a hand to Patrick in my life. I'd beat the snot out of him and then fired him.
Right as it happened, Patrick's like, "You got Berkey, you got Big Berkey on Friday." Ask him what his response would have been. Now, we've talked before, by the way, about times that Patrick has picked up the phone, and because you're like vocally, you two are similar, and people have confused the two of you. But I don't know that he's ever actively tried to impersonate you to other GMs. Do you know otherwise?
No, he's never done that. He would know better than that. But my favorite story about that is Slats called him one day. Patrick answered the phone and said hello. And Slats went into ripping me, thinking it was me. He was going, "Burke, you son of a bitch, you did this, you screwed us." Finally, Patrick kept saying, Mr. Sather, Mr. Sather. Finally, he said, "What?" He said, "I think you want my dad." "Oh, all right, Patrick, sorry. Have him call me."
You know, it's funny too. I remember having a conversation, something similar, another father-son scenario. This is with Clark McLean. So Clark is the son of Doug McLean, former NHL general manager and coach. And this is when he was working with, he's an agent. He was working with Duberman, and he would say he would talk to managers, and he wouldn't let them know that he was, Doug McLean's son. And then a lot of managers would kind of blow him off. Beat it. I don't have time for you. Be really dismissive. And then he would say like, "Oh, by the way, my dad says hi." I said, "Your dad says hi? Who's your dad?" "Oh, my dad's Doug McLean." And then all of a sudden everything would change. Like, "Oh, well, you tell Doug that I have all the time in the world for his son." And I just thought that was kind of funny, Berkey.
That's the code, though. The code in hockey is you're nice to family, you're nice to friends, you're nice to strangers. Yeah. Everyone's nice to everyone. And if you're a jerk, that changes very quickly. But my girlfriend goes in someplace and people talk to her, they'll treat her nicely because that's the code. Mm-hmm. Same as I did everyone else's wife or girlfriend. So that's the code. You act with respect.
The code. What we're seeing in these playoffs, Berkey, and I haven't had a chance to talk to you since this incident. So last Friday, now Montreal is out, and congratulations to the Washington Capitals. They're on to the second round. They'll face off against Carolina. You could really solidly make the argument that in that series, Tom Wilson was the most valuable. Like the hit on Alexander Carrier just snuffed out all the momentum that Montreal had in that series. You could make the argument. Do you have a thought on what we saw from Tom Wilson? I know we go into Washington and we'll talk about OV and he's fantastic, and Logan Thompson and everybody else on that team, Connor McMichael. But you have a thought on what we just saw from Tom Wilson?
He was the catalyst. He was the difference maker in that series. And he's a unicorn anyway, because very few guys can skate that well, bring that physical element and score goals, kill penalties. He kills penalties, for God's sake.
Yeah.
He's a very valuable player on their team. Add the dimension of the physical size, the intimidation factor. He is a unicorn. So I'm not surprised he was a factor. Here's my question for you, though, Jeff. Mm-hmm. When the fight started by the bench, that guy was tied up with Tom Wilson. Ended up with
Josh Anderson. Josh Anderson.
When did that switch happen?
I don't know.
Fight started with that guy.
Oh, you know what? I think one of the linesmen grabbed Jack Guy to get him out of the situation, and then all of a sudden Tom Wilson. And listen, like I really enjoyed that. I'm not a big handshake guy, but I really enjoyed the handshake between the two. Because, Berkey, as you well know, these two have had a rivalry going back to junior hockey. Like this, these exchanges between Josh Anderson and Tom Wilson, like this isn't new. And all these two guys find themselves playing against each other in the playoffs. This goes back to the OHL. And it went through the American League, and it's into the NHL, and this thing continues. Like I like both these guys, but this isn't anything new. Like I'm sure you've seen this before through guys that they started their rivalry in junior and they're going to play it out their entire NHL career because that's Josh Anderson and Tom Wilson.
They'll still hate each other in 20 years when they meet at a reunion somewhere. That's a real hatred, real And the guys have backed it up too. They both fought.
Yeah.
They're both good players that have unique skill sets. I'd give Tom a little bigger billing,
Yeah.
a little bigger shadow maybe, but they're similar players.
What do you have a bench fight story in your bag of tricks? The one that and again, like, there's no video of this one. This exists only in lore. It is a bench clearing brawl. And I think actually Larry Plow was on the ice and got jumped to start the whole thing. It's in the WHA, Minnesota Fighting Saints and New England Whalers. And Jack Carlson and Nick Fatiu end up fighting in the Minnesota. It's either in the penalty box or in the bench. And I think that someone had their skate off during it. And again, there's only audio of this thing. There is no video. But do you have a fighting in the bench or in the penalty box story that you can recall?
I've seen a couple of them, mainly where a guy's on the bench. He's got his back to the fight. The guy who's fighting has his back to his bench, and the other guy doesn't want to let him off the boards. So he's got him bent over a little bit, like bent back. He's got a disadvantage. I've seen that a couple of times, but in general, no. Usually, you get away from the bench and start throwing. I fought Paul Holmgren in the summer league. It started on the bench and it ended up out at center ice. So.
It started on the bench. You and Holmgren.
He challenged our whole bench, so I jumped off the ice to fight him. He grabbed me before I got on the ice, threw me up against the boards. We wrestled a little bit, and then we ended up right at the center ice dot. Had a great fight. I didn't do very well.
I was gonna say respectfully, Brian. What were you thinking?
Well, he challenged our bench. It wasn't like I had a choice. I looked around. I was the only guy standing up. So he said, "You want to go?" I said, "Sure, back up." Yeah. He backed up a couple of feet, and off I went. It was a bad business decision.
Nonetheless, at least you weren't one of those guys that the going gets tough. And what's the old saying? The going gets tough, and he cuts his skate laces. Like you weren't that guy. Good on you for that one. The Toronto Maple Leafs. We haven't really parked much time to talk about this yet. The Maple Leafs beat the Ottawa Senators in Game 6. Double them up 4-2, and they win the series in 6 games. Was there anything in that 6 games with the Ottawa Senators that leads you to believe that they have a chance against the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, who took care of the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5?
I saw enough that I'm going to respect the Ottawa Senators before we move on and talk about Toronto. Ottawa deserves a lot of credit. They did a great job. They had a great finish to the year.
Yep.
Had a great series against Toronto. So good job by Travis and Stevie Staios and Dave Poulin. Great job by Brady Tkachuk. Well done, gentlemen. But I will say, I thought all along, I said last week or the week before, I thought Toronto could go right to the conference finals. I'm not so sure after watching that series against Tampa. Florida is for real.
Florida's real, and Florida is scary. I was telling the story earlier on this week about, Dave Semenko saying to Marty McSorley, who wanted to fight every night, and Semenko just said, "No, Marty, we're not doing this every night." And he walks into the room one day and he sees Dave taping his wrists up, and Dave says to Marty, "Every now and then we must remind them, and tonight we're going to remind them." And I look at the Florida Panthers and what they did to the Tampa Bay Lightning and how they did it and how they just played however they wanted. They were rough. They took suspensions, didn't care. They're just rolling through. And I just can't help thinking to myself, Berkey, this is the Florida Panthers reminding everybody how they play and how good they are at it. Agree, disagree?
Just about every goaltender has demonstrated some warts in these playoffs, but not Bob. Bob's been good. He had one bad period maybe, but Bob's been great. So they have the great goaltending. The systems play is flawless, Paul Maurice. But they, like you said, they got bite. They don't care. They're up 4-2. They're out down 4-2. They're playing the same way, running people over, intimidating people. It's going to be hard. Now, I think Toronto has a good physical element of their own. They don't seem as mean or as ornery.
I was going to say, in a series like this, Florida and Toronto, and we've seen these two teams match up before, the one thing that the Maple Leafs are very familiar with, but are not familiar with in a Florida Panthers uniform is Brad Marshan. And listen, Marshan was injured. We didn't see a lot of him down the stretch, clearly after the trade. But all of a sudden now you take the Florida Panthers, defending Stanley Cup champions, and add Brad Marshan to the mix. Like, it's a frightening proposal, Berkey.
Well, he brings a nasty element, but he hasn't shown that yet. He's just shown that he's a really good hockey player. A couple of great assists, really heads-up plays. Mm-hmm. He's a smart hockey player. He doesn't need that element yet because they've got it without him, but he'll show that if it comes time. So it's a real addition, no question. And Seth
Jones?
Seth Jones has been amazing to me the first couple of games.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about that, too? There was always and this is why sometimes, and you can speak to this better than I can, there's always that idea. It's really tough sometimes to evaluate players that are on bad teams. And when Seth Jones, went from Columbus to Chicago, this is still while Chicago had designs on being a good team. And then next thing you know, everyone's getting fired and the rebuild is on, and Seth Jones finds himself stuck in Chicago. It's really tough sometimes to evaluate a player when they're in that situation. Like, if you're Bill Zito in this scenario, Berkey, how are you evaluating Seth Jones on a really bad Chicago team?
You're making a gamble on what you think you have. You think you can get this player. They knew him. They had him early on. They believed in him. They weren't concerned about what he was showing. I said 2 weeks ago, he said, I'm really sick of losing. I said on this show, I think, why didn't he just do more than to turn it around and whine about it? But I take my words back. He's doing it. Yeah. This guy just needed a chance to get on the right stage.
And he's been excellent. Your thoughts on the Oilers? They beat the Kings last night 6-4. They win the series in 6 games. Listen, early this was looking like all of a sudden it was role reversal. And the Los Angeles Kings were going to roll the Edmonton Oilers. And there were going to be all the questions about McDavid and the future and the net minding and everything. The next thing you know, they get a couple of lucky bounces, and the Edmonton Oilers did not take their foot off the throat once it was placed there. Do you have a thought on McDavid and company?
Yeah, I picked LA to win that series. They went up 2-0. I was feeling pretty good about that. But I should never bet against Connor and Leon. You should never bet against those two guys. What they did was remarkable. They were down 2-0, getting outplayed badly. They turned the tide single-handedly. Now, I like the supporting cast guys did a real good job. I think the guys they brought on, Vander Kane, helped. I always draw a blank on the guy they got from Boston.
Oh, Trent Frederick.
He was helpful. Yeah. They got some, Zach Hyman stepped up, so he was a star role earlier in the year or last year. This year, more supporting cast. But they're getting Corey Perry chipping in. They're supporting cast and playing all 4 lines and all 3 defense pair. That was the biggest single difference in my mind.
Let me ask you about Corey Perry, since obviously you had him in Anaheim. Did you have any sense that he was going to still be doing this in 2025 when you were winning the Stanley Cup with him in 2007?
No, because they're all gone, but Corey, they're all gone now. But no, I didn't think that. I thought he'd play a long time. I thought he'd always be a pain in the ass because that's what he does. Yeah. But I didn't think he'd play this effectively this long. He's not done yet in my mind.
I'm with you on this. I think, and I love it. Like, I love the players that. This is why I love. That's why I love Peter Forsberg, even though like he wasn't the same Peter Forsberg we all knew. I like the guys that are like, no, you have to drag me off the ice. Like, as long as someone's going to pay me to play hockey, I'm going to play hockey. And that's Corey Perry. And you're right. He's still effective in the playoffs. He still is. He
take the league minimum to play another year, have a chance to win. That's the way he is. Yeah, I love the guy. I love him as a competitor. I love him as a teammate. He was a great player for me, and I had him as a baby, right? I had him his first and second year. Yeah. So I didn't have him very long, but he was really effective for us.
Big headline this morning around the New York Rangers. Mike Sullivan, who I know you admire, named the head coach of the New York Rangers. As we said, Mike Sullivan was going to be unemployed for as long as Mike Sullivan wanted to be unemployed, and it wasn't very long. He finds himself in the Big Apple. Your thoughts on the move today by the Rangers?
I heard all this about 3 days ago, so I'm not surprised. I'm sure there's no tampering because the league doesn't allow that. But I think if they had permission with Kyle and Chris Terry, they have permission. They don't need they can tamper all they want with permission. So I think it was probably done right. This was a sensible, logical result for Pittsburgh and for the Rangers. Good for Sully. He's a good coach. He's the most prepared. His teams, when I worked with Sully, his teams were the most prepared teams I'd ever seen. One thing he did really well. So good guy, happy for him. But I can't say too much more about that, not till July 1st.
Let me ask you about Rick Tocket, speaking of coaches, because it's been a little while here, and now the Vancouver Canucks are looking for their next coach. And Rick Tocket will either find a new spot behind an NHL bench, or Rick Tocket will go back to TNT and entertain all of us. Were you surprised, though? Again, like I don't know what's going on in Rick Tocket's private life, his personal life. I don't know why he made this decision, so I'm not going to cast any aspersions whatsoever. But were you surprised that Rick Tocket stepped away?
No, and I won't cast any either. I'm a big fan. I think he had very personal and very sound reasons for leaving. I never question a person who comes out that way. Mm-hmm. To me, I heard these rumors back in February. He wasn't going back. And Jimmy Rutherford seemed very disappointed in his press conference. I know they made a very big financial offer to get him to stay. So it wasn't money, wasn't control. Was he wanted to get back farther away from the West Coast and coach again? He will have his choice of opportunities. He's a good coach. It's unfortunate it didn't work out, but the one good thing that you got to remember is, Jeff, the acceleration now. Sullivan's gone. So now it's like musical chairs. One chair is occupied. Yeah. Now it's going to accelerate this whole process with 7 vacancies. This whole process will be accelerated now. 7 and counting as teams get knocked out.
You know, it is interesting too. Right now, there's, as you mentioned, all the vacancies around the NHL. When you went through this as a manager, I'm sure you had your sort of hierarchy of, okay, these are the people we need to talk to, and they're gonna. Not all of them we're going to have a chance with because they're going to sign with other teams. Like, walk us through what happens with, well, even Vancouver right now. Like, Vancouver's looking for a coach. Rutherford the other day says, look, we don't want to drag our heels on this one. We need to solve this one fast. Walk us through this from a GM's point of view.
Well, what you do is you do your list first off. You find out you got some young guys. You're an American League guy maybe that you want to look at. Got some young guys you really like. You got veterans. Peter Laviolette's back in the hopper. You assemble your list and you start doing your due diligence and research. Then you bring in a longer list to interview, maybe 7, 8 guys, and hopefully some women at some point. We bring in a list of 7 or 8, do some long interviews, probably on the phone to start with, then get to your short list. You're trying to identify the systems they play, the way their personnel orientation is in terms of how they use people, how much leadership group uses, and so on. So you do a lot of research. Now, if you do your proper research, I research guys all the time. I interview people 365 days a year. So I bump into a coach at a coffee shop. I talk to him for a half hour. I go to a junior game an hour early and talk to the coach for half an hour. So I was interviewing all the time. So a couple times I only hired one guy. I only interviewed and hired one guy, Mark Crawford in Vancouver, prior to living in Calgary as a GM. So that's the process you use. You whittle it down. The players come with lots of handouts now, lots of written materials.
Sure. Let me ask you one final question. I'll let you get on with your afternoon. We've seen a couple of Jim Rutherford press conferences recently, and like Jim's not shy about telling you how he feels. And my one big takeaway from all of it was that whether you like what Jim says, whether it gets him and the Vancouver Canucks in some kind of trouble, I always admired people that, respect you enough not to give you a bullshit answer. Like Jim Rutherford, you ask him a question, he will give you an answer. I know there's some GM pressers that we've seen the last couple of weeks where fans of those teams have come away frustrated or not satisfied or felt like, their manager's not being forward with them. No one would accuse you, Brian, of ever trying to BS the fans. Like, you're the same way. You ask Brian Burke a question, he's going to give you an answer. When you would go into these end of the season pressers, how much in your own mind did you say to yourself, this is how much I'm prepared to give? this is what I am going to say? Or do you just react to the situation?
Well, Chris Brumwell was our PR guy in Hartford, or in Vancouver. Alex Gilchrist was my PR guy in Anaheim. And before we had a press conference like that, they would bring me in and brief me. Here's what you're going to get asked. Here's what you're going to get pushed on. Here's what people are saying that you won't like. So they prepped you for it. So you had some sense of what they're going to say. So very seldom do you get an off-the-wall question like, what about this? What about that? Yeah. So if your PR guy does his job, you're ready for that interview. And you have an answer, even if it's an angry one, you have an answer ready. I don't mind coming off as angry. Jimmy Rutherford, just like I was. And you ask a question, I'm going to give you the answer, whether you like it or not. I could give a rat's ass.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Burke, get back to your afternoon. Thanks as always for parking time here on Civilian Fridays, as we like to call it. And I will share your answer with the mystery Patrick who sent in the text earlier on this week.
Okay.
You be good, Burke. Take care. We'll talk to you in 7 days.
Jeff. See you. Thank you.
There he is. Brian Burke. I love it. From just a random name there, Zach. Just Patrick. That's all. What would you do if your son did that? By the way, I do have something from the chat. TageFan7272. Marek hasn't talked about the Amerks. That would be the Rochester Americans, folks. The Amerks winning and Levi getting back-to-back shutouts. So, first of all, that was a tough series. That was a really tough series against Syracuse. And the thing about Syracuse is they're older and tougher, and like they spent the entire series running around trying to hurt a younger Rochester Americans team. Oh, who was the defenseman that ended up getting caved in that fight? Oh, it was a really tough one to watch too. The defenseman that played with Patrick Waugh in Quebec. He's on the Rochester Americans. I'm blanking on the name. Hang on a second here. Hang on. Now it's going to bug me. This is a little peek into my life here, folks. So it's a kid that played D for Patrick Waugh in Quebec. What's his name? Komarov. Vasyvold Komarov. There we go. Phew. So he got in a fight and got caved in. But like that was the story of the entire series. And, listen, like Levi has been outstanding. I'm going to give you one thing here. So I'm trying to find out. I was told that the playoff mask that Levi has is an all-timer. Like an all-timer. And so I'm going to spend part of my weekend trying to find out what this person meant when they said Levi's playoff mask for the Amerks is an all-timer. I'm glad this was brought up in the chat, because I'm going to find out what it means that there is an all-timer mask in the American Hockey League. What's happening with Laz? Komarov. Thanks, Tage Fan Komarov. Yeah.
He got caught in traffic, so he can either call in via phone now.
Yeah, let's just have him call in.
Video. Okay, or you can
Put it this way. Laz isn't pretty enough that we need to have him on video, right? Brian Burke's pretty, so we want him on video. Laz, don't take this the wrong way, bud. You're not pretty enough.
I'll do that.
that we need video. Don't worry. You don't got to shine it up. You don't got to put the Mac 30 on like your buddy Jeffy here. Don't need to do that one. So while we wait for Laz, and thanks Tage Fan, by the way, in the chat for that question. I am going to try to find out what that means by the all-timer. In the meantime, let's do the Krispy Inbox. Time now for the Krispy Inbox, presented by the Ninja Krispy 4-in-1 Portable Glass Air Fryer. Hit it, Zach.
Meet the first of its kind, the Ninja Krispy Portable Cooking System. The power of a full-sized air fryer in the palm of your hand, so you can cook big or small batches. Just prep it, crisp it, serve it, and store it all in one.
Laz is too busy for us. I'll give you a call. It's an all-in-one. I'm going to say that next time he asks me to fill in on Cuppa. I don't know. I'm walking the dog. I'll just do it on the phone. It's an all-in-one system that includes 4-quart, 6-cup Tupperware glass containers and 2 storage lids. How do you think that would go over? What? You can just see Vic screaming at me. The Ninja Krispy is thermal shock resistant and can go from frozen to crispy in minutes. With the Krispy Power Pod, you get the power of a full-sized air fryer in the palm of your hands. The 4-quart container fits 4 pounds of chicken or veggies. Cook a personal-sized meal in 7 minutes in the 6-cup container. Max crisp, bake, air fry, and recrisp with the Ninja Crispy. You can prep, cook, and store anything from crispy favorites to one-dish meals. Visit their website in the link in the show description and stay tuned for your chance to win a free Ninja Crispy. Looking forward to that. So what is in the Crispy inbox? And by the way, the way to get in here on the program, random comments, thoughts, questions, all of it, the sheet at thenationnetwork.com. That is the sheet at thenationnetwork.com.
Yes, today this one is from Michael. He says, "Hey guys, there have only been only 10 players in history to have the waiting period waived for the Hall of Fame induction, the last being Gretzky in 99. The Hockey Hall of Fame said after Gretzky that it wouldn't waive any more players unless, in quotes, under certain humanitarian circumstances. My question is, if any, who is / are the next players you see with the potential for this to happen again?" Michael.
Right now, none. None of them fit the under certain humanitarian circumstances. To that, one of the things that I think people found pretty distasteful was how long it took Pat Burns to get into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And he didn't get into the Hockey Hall of Fame until he had bluntly died. Sometimes there are petty rivalries and feuds that keep people out. And I found that one, and I think a lot of us found that pretty tasteless. How he wasn't able to get into the Hockey Hall of Fame until he passed away. One of, so short answer right now, none. And Pat had cancer. The short answer, no. One Hockey Hall of Fame story that I think is worthy of note. And I don't know how many people know this one. Certainly, if you're interested in hockey history, you'll know it. So the Hockey Hall of Fame. So when you are inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, the induction ceremony used to be men only. Only men were allowed to go. And Ted Lindsay, when he was granted passage into the Hockey Hall of Fame, Ted Lindsay said, "If I can't bring my wife, I'm not going." And they said, "The rules are the rules. Rules are the rules." So Ted Lindsay, for his Hall of Fame induction day, didn't go. Said, "If I can't bring my wife, I'm not going." And so Ted Lindsay in the Hockey Hall of Fame never attended his induction ceremony. You know what happened the season after? They changed the rules because of Ted Lindsay. There's a lot of reasons, by the way. You don't have to be a hockey historian. You don't have to get too deep into it. This is where I live. There's a lot of reasons why every player in the NHL should tip their hat to Ted Lindsay. Ted Lindsay was, one of the first players to start mentioning and actively working towards a players' union. That was Ted Lindsay, and he paid the price. His career, he paid the price for it, and he made that sacrifice for all the players who enjoy lovely contracts right now for a number of different reasons. Ted was that guy, and also from the Hall of Fame. It used to be just a boys' club. It used to be just men invited until Ted Lindsay said, "If I can't bring my wife, I ain't coming." And he lived up to that the next year after they changed how it worked. So anyway, that had nothing to do with the question. I just wanted to throw in that Hockey Hall of Fame story. Because bluntly, the answer to the question for me is like none. I love Sidney Crosby. I wouldn't waive. I love Alexander Ovechkin. I wouldn't waive. Like for nobody right now for the automatic waiting period. Anyway, speaking of waiting period, we've made someone wait. Someone who we said, let's just take him on the phone because he's not pretty enough to be on video. He is Jonny Lazarus. He's coming to us courtesy of JP Weisers. JP Weisers, this segment of presentation of JP Weisers, proudly Canadian, celebrates the moment with a limited edition Stanley Cup bottle, the perfect match for you and your game night crew, because the playoffs are best enjoyed with great whiskey and good company. Now you and your friends can lift the Stanley Cup bottle for Canada with JP Weisers, the official whiskey of the NHL. For 165 years, JP Weisers has been woven into the fabric of Canadian celebrations, bringing people together to raise a glass to the passion and pride that fuel Canada's game. The one and only Jonny Lazarus joins us now to talk about all things Ranger, both on and off the ice. Jonny Lazarus, how are you today, my friend?
I'm great, and I didn't want to keep you waiting, so I decided that the phone might have been the best place. So you didn't keep me waiting. Thankfully, you have a wonderful producer in Zach, who probably hasn't slept in the last 10 days. So credit to Zach for being on the money. And my producer on our morning show is already looking to go to Florida and take a vacation.
Zach. Johnny, after last night, Zach is not only still awake, but he's still waiting for the swelling to go down, too.
He's also waiting for me to answer his text chirping Shane Pinto, which I haven't done.
Let me just, you know what? Let me just get this. We've seen Shane Pinto on your program before as well. And do you have a quick, before we get to everything Ranger here, just a quick thought on not this series, but just a thought on the Ottawa Senators. You know, Burke was on a couple of seconds ago saying, like, listen, you know, bravo to Travis Green and Steve Staios. I'll throw Michael Landauer into that mix as well. Who's really, as an owner, has helped turn things around with the Ottawa Senators, Brady Tkachuk and Shane Pinto, et cetera. Do you have a quick thought on what we just saw from the Ottawa Senators?
Yeah, listen, I think, you know, when we talk about teams like Ottawa, Montreal, not as much Minnesota, but, you know, these kind of teams that are in the first round, Minnesota does not actually fall in that category at all because they've lost like 8 years in a row in the first round. But, you know, when you see these young teams get their feet wet in their first playoff series, it's easy to talk about moral victories. And I'm sure neither organization right now is interested in talking about moral victories.
Sure.
But for the Ottawa Senators, I think they put pride back into that logo when they may have lost that for the past few years, right? Like Ottawa somewhat became, I don't want to say a laughing stock, but when people talked about the Ottawa Senators, like they were the butt end of a joke for most of the time, right? So, you know, and Montreal didn't really have that. Like it was Ottawa, Buffalo, Detroit, right? They were in that like little triangle of teams that needed to make some noise and get to the next step. So I think for Ottawa, you know, especially the talks this year about Brady Tkachuk and how he's unhappy there and blah, blah, you can see how much Brady loves that fan base. And I think that's important too. So for them to have that sense of pride back in their logo and back within the organization and to get that feel of playoff game again, you know, I think you just got to tip your cap and be happy for that group, even though they came up short on what could have been a really historic comeback too in the playoffs, which I was rooting for, and I'm sure everyone outside of Toronto was rooting for. So really happy for those guys. And I haven't like texted Shane or anything yet, but you know, you want to let it sink in a little bit before you reach out to those guys. But I'm sure looking back on it, he'll be pumped that he got to experience it.
100%. Like they didn't feel like it last night. They won't feel like it today, but over the next little while, weeks and months, they'll realize that, you know, this isn't the end. It isn't the beginning, but as you know, Churchill once said, this is the end of the beginning for the Ottawa Senators. That's what it's at right now. And to your point about the Montreal Canadiens, I just loved having that arena back in the playoffs. Like I can't stop talking about how great it was having the Bell Center back in the play. Like what? First of all, what a great year for that building. Whether it's Four Nations or the couple of games that we got to see and the bench clearing brawl, not bench clearing brawl, but brawl on the bench between Josh Anderson and Tom Wilson. Like, just a quick thought on what a great season it was for that building, Johnny.
Yeah. You know, also I should say I'm at my destination, so I'm parked now. Zach, if you want to turn the camera on so Big Willie Styles can chirp me, you're more than welcome to. But with that said, I think, you know, going from four nations to playoffs, and, you know, I got a lot of crap for it in early March when I tweeted, you know, when Montreal started their run, I was like, this building deserves playoff hockey, right? Like sometimes you got to appreciate, you know, inspiring hockey and fans that crave something they haven't had in a long time. Because you think back to and you know, everyone knows this. You think back to Montreal's like last playoff run, they were in the Cup final, but it was COVID and there was no one really in the buildings. So for them to experience Four Nations and what that Saturday night brought to hockey, like that was probably a top two, not two sporting event I've been at, you know, in my life. USA Canada, that first meeting. And for them to get, a playoff win at home, that game 3, I'm sure was an unbelievable feeling for Montreal Canadiens fans, and to have that taste again. And you see, people not only inside the Bell Center, but outside the Bell Center also, right? The scenes outside the building were insane too, just as insane as it looked inside. So any hockey fan loves seeing that.
Okay, we got the video going. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll introduce him once again. There he is, Don Juan Too Many, Lance Romance, our very favorite, the one and only, Jonny Lazarus. Okay, let's get on Rangers issues. Listen, like the worst kept secret.
Yeah.
Like the worst kept secret around the NHL, Mike Sullivan was going to end up in the Big Apple. I know there was, a little dalliance and a little, uptick of interest with the Boston Bruins, but this was going to be the Rangers from day one. Like when the split happened between the Pittsburgh Penguins and Mike Sullivan, you could draw a direct line, between the, PPG Paints Arena and Madison Square Garden. I'm guessing you weren't surprised at all.
No, I'm not surprised. I'm sure your next question is going to be how I feel about it too. And honestly, I'm not really moved. I don't know if I don't mean to say that like in a negative way. But right now the concern for me with the Rangers is the roster that they have in place. Like Mike Sullivan, he's a phenomenal coach, and you could bring in the greatest coach in the history of the sport to come in and coach the New York Rangers right now. But I have a bad taste in my mouth from what the season was, and I think a lot of fans probably feel the same. And the last 2 coaching hires, going back to Gerard Gallant and then Pierre Laviolette, were also where Mike Sullivan is. And granted, those 2 coaches aren't who Mike Sullivan is. But at that time, Gallant was just the number 1 guy based on resume, and Laviolette was probably the number 1 guy based on resume. So right now, Mike Sullivan becomes available, and he then becomes the number 1 target for coaches, right? And he's the best guy based on resume, and the Rangers don't want to miss out on getting a guy like that, which they shouldn't. Like if you pass on Mike Sullivan, it's probably pretty foolish. But at the same moment, the last 2 coaches, while they had success in that first year, it turns out they weren't the right fit to get them over the hump. So I'm not going to sit here and say Mike Sullivan is going to, for sure, win the Rangers a Stanley Cup. Will he be a good coach? I hope so. Will he be the right coach? I won't know until the puck drops come October. So I'm not going to sit here and say he's the best fit.
Yeah. Here's what I wonder about, because I'm with you. Like I always look at these situations and say, like, is the problem coaching or composition? But the one thing that I wonder about with the New York Rangers, because we've seen before when this team sort of hits its stride, it's pretty beautiful to watch. And like they can string together games. Now, a lot of it helps when you have Igor Shesterkin between the pipes. I get that. But what I wonder about with Mike Sullivan, and I still think there's going to be some roster tweaking. Like, look, there are some Rangers that underperformed. If he can get Mika Zibanejad back to what we think Mika Zibanejad can be, awesome. Ditto Chris Kreider, Adam Fox, and even with the Four Nations, didn't have an Adam Fox-style season. And we've all taken plenty of whacks at the Keandre Miller pinata all season long. I think the question to me is, now that you have Sullivan there, like this is one of the best coaches in the NHL, does it lessen how much tweaking Chris Drury has to make to the roster? Like you could have made the argument that if they kept stuck with Lavely, that he had to do major reconstruction. Does this change anything for the GM?
No, I still think you have to do major reconstruction. And let me pull a Jeff Marek and say, I'm happy you brought us here. I'm happy you brought us here. Because
my tricks. My transition tricks.
Yeah, well, it's actually one that I like a lot.
Okay.
But you mentioned Adam Fox, right? And you mentioned Four Nations. And Adam got a lot of criticism for how he performed in Four Nations. Well, who was the head coach that decided to demote him after one period in the Four Nations?
Yep.
That was Mike Sullivan. I don't know what that does to a player-coach relationship. I'm sure, they spoke about it throughout that tournament, and I'm sure that'll be one of the questions that comes up at Mike Sullivan's press conference, which we still don't know what day that's going to be. Yeah. But a question that I have is, in your decision to demote Adam Fox, what did that do for your communication with him in those 10 days, right? And what is your plan for him? Obviously, he's the number 1 defenseman here. He's the number 1 defenseman in this organization, But
that's going to be, can I just pause on that one? Can I pause on 1 second?
Yeah.
But that's up to Adam Fox. Like if I'm anyone on that team or I'm Adam Fox, I'm saying to myself, listen, I understand you're going to ruffle a lot of feathers, but this is a coach that'll do anything to win, and he's not worried about my feelings. Like, isn't that more on Adam Fox than it is on Mike Sullivan?
The Four Nations part, or just in general?
No, just like how you're going to react to it. Like this sort of like strained relationship. Like, if you're Adam Fox, if you're Adam Fox, you're sour about the whole thing. Absolutely. But I'm sure, like, listen, Adam Fox is played hockey his entire life. He understands the dynamic. He has to understand that the coach's job at that point is not his feelings and his relationship with him, whether he knew that he's going to be the coach or not, but it's to do whatever it's going to take to try to win at the Four Nations tournament.
But they didn't win.
No, they didn't win. Of course they didn't. Right?
So I
mean,
yeah, and I think with the whole Fox Four Nations thing, it's a separate conversation we can have. But like, do I think Fox deserved the demotion? No. Do I understand why Werenski deserved the promotion? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are two different conversations to have. But knowing what Adam Fox brings to a team, his number one strength is being a power play quarterback. So when you take that away, you know, his game is not going to be as impactful. And I think, you know, that was one of the bigger reasons why we saw him underperform a little bit at Four Nations, because, you know, his greatest strength, he wasn't really put in position to succeed in.
Off the ice, surprisingly, and no previous knowledge, no tip and pitches, no nothing, Joe Micheletti calls it a career. You know, we followed Sam Rosen all season long, and we all have our memories of the great calls. It's like that voice is synonymous with the New York Rangers for a number of generations of hockey fans, yourself, I'm guessing, included in that. Like when you see the New York Rangers, that's the voice you're going to hear. And Joe Micheletti, you know, Sam and Joe, we knew Sam was going. We didn't know Joe was going to go. He was as a player, he was a really solid guy. He was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, went to the WHA, played for Calgary, played for Edmonton, where they made him a winger with Bill Flett, played with Cowboy, back to the NHL with the merger, played on a couple of teams, St. Louis and Colorado, and then had, with the Blues and now the Rangers, a stellar broadcasting career. You know Joe Micheletti, I know Joe Micheletti. I have never had anything other than amazing encounters with a very professional broadcaster, Joe Micheletti. Looked you in the eye, shook your hand, knew your name, like all of it. Like all the things that we want our kids to be as far as like professionals. That was Joe Micheletti. You ever thought on Joe Micheletti just suddenly calling it a career?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts and appreciation for him, and just like one thing personal, I guess I can say. Before I was like anything in hockey media, I was doing like a Ranger show called Believe in Rangers on the Believe Podcast Network, and probably got like 80 listeners per episode. But I got Joe's email. I emailed Joe. I told him I was a big Ranger fan. Would love to have him on. Answered within an hour probably of the time that I emailed him. Came on and couldn't have been nicer. Treated me with so much respect. And honestly, his brother Pat is a great guy as well. Pat does a lot of work. Big Ten college hockey. So I've gotten to. I've never met Pat in person. But I've gotten to like exchange with him over social media, and his son Alex as well. So the Micheletti family is so well known in hockey, and just unbelievable people, and all they do is love the game of hockey. No egos to them. Like they just want to see anyone they come across thrive, and the game be a great product. So that you have to respect also. But to your point, Sam and Joe, that's what it's always been, right? Like I have some memories of Sam and JD, but I was really like 9 or 10 years old.
It was so good. But
I was a little kid. Yeah, I was so young for them. So in my formative years, it's really been Sam and Joe. And honestly, I couldn't really imagine like Joe without Sam or Sam without Joe doing a broadcast. So like maybe it is nice that they're kind of going out together. And I know Howie Rose had a really nice Twitter thread going with a kind sentiment of Joe Micheletti basically saying that he didn't want to take anything away from Sam Rosen and his retirement, which is just like so selfless of him. So, like what an unbelievable guy and what an awesome career. And, hopefully those two have a wonderful and peaceful retirement.
Amen to that. Okay, wherever you're going, enjoy it. And whatever you do this weekend, enjoy it. And
I actually have a question for you. I have my best friend's wedding, and I'm emceeing the rehearsal dinner tonight. I feel like you might have done that in your past. Any tips or advice?
What's that?
Any tips or advice on how to MC a rehearsal dinner?
Ooh, oh yeah. Always open up with a joke, right? So I don't know whether they'll let you work blue or not, but always start off with a joke. Always compliment the bride relentlessly all throughout the speech, and always chirp the groom. Always chirp the groom, and always say like, one of the great go-to lines for weddings has always been, well, we had a hard time, deciding who was going to sit closest to the head table. So what we decided to do was we determined who was going to sit closest to the front and who was going to be in the back based on the amount of money spent on the wedding gift. The bride and groom would like to thank Pete for the oven mitt. That's nice little
I haven't
line
even gotten him a gift yet.
Well, enjoy, and you'll do great. You become a professional and tremendous broadcaster. So enjoy it, and hang on, listen. Don't peak early, okay? At these things, you know what it's like,
drinks.
right? Don't peak early. No one needs a puddle. No one needs a puddle behind the microphone. The one that just goes on and on. Don't be that guy, all right? Just take it easy, and then after that, you can be the one-man conga line. But don't peak early. Don't peak early, bud.
Thank you for the tip. I appreciate it. And Zach, as we say in Judaism, mazel tov to you on the Game 6 first-round series win.
Oh, he's thrilled. He's
Thanks,
thrilled.
guys.
Don't
Excited
worry.
to see what's to come in round 2. Do they lose in 5 or 6?
I think
Get
most
this guy off.
I think even Leafs fans are calling it Panthers in 3, Laz. I think that's what the consensus seems to be. Although we'll see what happens when we get there. Enjoy the wedding, pal.
Yep. Thank you guys. Have a great weekend.
There he is, Jonny Lazarus, one half of the tandem along with Kobe Cohen that is the morning cup of hockey. Throwing some chirps and shade your way, Zach. How about that, eh?
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, I did throw some chirps at him last night. He texted me yesterday before the game. We were talking about something else, and then he goes, "Go Sens go." And then after the game, I chirped him about his buddy Pinto and something along the lines of,
he was good in that
I think
series,
he's got
man.
some time.
Oh
Yeah, it wasn't actually disrespect to Pinto.
was
I was
good,
more so
man.
taking a shot at Laz, but using his buddy as the middleman in that, and reminded him, if you want to get somebody on your show, maybe Pinto has a little bit more time on his hands now to come on Morning Cup of Hockey. I don't know.
Oh, doesn't have to get off soon. Oh, I got all day. Yeah, no, I can do the whole show. I'm the new Pat Maroon.
I was just being
can
a
hop
dick,
on.
to be fair. So yeah, shots were warranted. I get it. I understand. Also, by the way, Jeff.
Yeah.
You know how he flipped that on you and he said, "I'm glad you got us there"? I don't know if this is going to make you proud or you're going to say, "What the hell?"
No.
But last night on the post-game show, Vic and I were talking about something, and we're talking about Simone Benoit, and I said, "Let's pause on that." And then I went, "Whoa, wait a minute."
No, don't be. Aim higher, man. Like, let me pause on that for 1 second. Don't use all my stupid transitions.
We
Built
both
up
looked
this
at each other and I was
library of dumb transitions. I know. You can use all my dirty jokes though that I tell you off the air. You can use all those. Feel free to commit career suicide using those on the air. Anywho, coming up on the NHL docket tonight. We only have the one game. The sheet is powered by FanDuel, as we like to remind you. Home of the 7-game parlay. Make every moment more on FanDuel. FanDuel, proud to connect fans to the major sports moments that matter to them. This has been a Homer series. We'll see if it is a major sports moment tonight for the Winnipeg Jets, and they can end this thing in 6, or we're going back for a game 7. Speaking of back, how about Nick Ehlers? How about Nick Ehlers with the Winnipeg Jets here all of the sudden? I don't know that he's 100% or close to 100% or anywhere close to 100%. But I saw him. You saw him. The Jets tweeted about him. Sounds like we're going to see Nick Ehlers tonight in there for the Winnipeg Jets. No Mark Scheifele. He didn't make the trip to St. Louis. And we've seen a war of words between the two coaches, Scott Arniel and Jim Montgomery, fighting over which hit actually injured Mark Scheifele, to which Scott Arniel, and I'll paraphrase here, something along the lines of, "Oh, I didn't know Monty got his medical degree." Or had a medical degree. I always love it. Like, honestly, I always love it when coaches get snide and petty with one another. Because I'll tell you one thing, man. As much as coaches talk about the coaching fraternity and we all support each other and all that, they would all knock their grandmothers down an icy road for a nickel or a win. They are competitive and they are vicious. If you've ever talked to a coach about another coach in the NHL, it is not all kumbaya. Trust me. We just don't see it. That's why I love when you get like these little mini eruptions and it's like, ooh, I wonder where this is going to lead. But I'm loving the war of words between the two coaches. Really good.
But those guys are actually best friends, are they not? Am I wrong on that one?
Well, they were together
Yeah,
with
pretty
Manitoba
close.
once upon a time too. So
okay.
one as a coach, one as a player. But nonetheless,
Right.
I really do. I always appreciate the war of words, and it's usually great when it's like Paul Maurice is involved.
Yeah.
Like,
I like
he's
that
the king.
back and forth.
Paul's the king.
Yeah.
Like, good luck. Like, you want to you choose your battles wisely. Like, if you're another coach and you're facing off against the Florida Panthers, maybe think twice about getting into a war of words with that head coach. John Cooper's the same way, right? These are two of the best. Like, how quickly did Florida post-game pressers become must-watch television just because of Paul Maurice? It's like all playoffs.
I know. And then they carried it over, like Matthew Tkachuk when he was asked about the rivalry, and he just throws the last-second dagger at Tampa on the way out, saying, I don't know, it's not much of a rivalry anymore.
So good.
Oh, my God.
But that's
Just
the thing,
taking
like,
shots.
but that's the thing, like, and again, like, history bears this out. Maple Leafs can say the same thing about the Ottawa Senators. Like, it's only a rivalry when you lose. Like, for this thing to really be a rivalry between the Ottawa Senators and the Toronto Maple Leafs, like, if you're just a fan of hockey and not a fan of either team, Ottawa's got to win one of these. Like, they really do. Like, when Ottawa was coming back and they won that pair of games, I'm like, man, if they do this, all of a sudden now it's not just a one-way street. Now you have a rivalry because you got to lose. You got to lose to make it a rivalry. But never happened. I'm looking forward to this game tonight because this one has been nasty from the opening faceoff. It was the first game to kick off the playoffs this year, and it hasn't settled down. Every game has been rough. Every game has been violent. Every game, like you saw last game with the hits on Scheifele, with Shen and Faxa. Oh, and it's going to continue tonight. It's going to be the same thing tonight. I was on with Jamie and Sarah on their pregame show earlier this afternoon. And I was saying, like, look, if Winnipeg is going to do this, it's not going to be a pretty game. Like, I don't think you're going to have like mini highlight videos coming out of this one. This is going to be one of those like games where you have a screen cap of like 8 players in the crease and like 4 guys like playing snooker, trying to get the puck over the red line, and there's going to be the beautiful game captions, right? That's what doesn't this one feel that way to you? Like, if Winnipeg's going to end this thing and have it not go back to Manitoba, it's going to be an ugly game. And bring it on. Like, I love ugly hockey in the playoffs, boy.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be one of those ones where every time you touch the puck, you are going to have someone breathing down your neck. There's going to be no room. There's going to be... The one thing, too, that St. Louis had done really well was take over the transition game, which Winnipeg seemed to kind of just allow them to do in those games where St. Louis tied it back up. Like, that's not going to be happening here tonight. Winnipeg, if it is happening, then St. Louis is going to win this thing pretty handedly, I think. But I think Winnipeg's going to make a concerted effort to shut that down, which just lends itself to gross, muddy hockey. It's like, I'm going to love every second of it, but it's going to be disgusting tonight.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be awesome. Like, honestly, I was saying this to Jamie and Sarah this afternoon. Like, I'm sorry, Winnipeg Jets fans, but I want Winnipeg to lose tonight because I want to see another game. I don't want this series to end. Just like I'm happy that Colorado's sending this thing to a Game 7 at the American Airlines Center. Like, I'm happy about that, too. Geez, we haven't even talked about that at all today. That was a hell of a game last night. That was a lot of fun. And in a losing effort, Rantanen has one of his best games with the Dallas Stars. 3 assists and a goal.
That game was on crack. Like, I was doing the post-game show, and we could see that game, and Vic kept looking at me, being like, what are you looking at? And I would just be talking, like, staring at the screen, talking about the Leafs game, being like, I can't take my eyes away from this game. You have Nathan McKinnon scoring, bouncing it off of, like, 43 different people, and the popcorn vendor before it goes in net, and then you've got, like, these... The play by Rantanen, the goal that, like, him stepping up in that moment, injury, like, just all the way around, it was like, I cannot get enough of this one. Jeff, you talk about series that you want to never end.
Yeah, I
That
know.
one, I could watch them go back and forth.
Best of 11.
For as long as the Stanley Cup playoffs need to go. Like,
Call the
if
audible
they
now.
want to
Best of
finish
11.
and one of them gets knocked out in the second round and they just want to like reboot and those guys can play like the third and the fourth rounds and we're just for our entertainment, I'd be
keep
fine
playing.
with that.
Me too.
Yeah.
You and me both. Okay, on that we'll wrap things up. Zach, congratulations. Can have a couple of good night sleeps before the torture begins. There you go. Zach's gonna feel good for a couple of days, and then it's all gonna come crashing down.
Get my Battle of Ontario belts.
Oh, jeez. All right, enjoy it. I think that series probably starts on Monday. I think we'll see. Okay, thanks to our guest today. Fridays are reserved for Burkey, so Civilian Fridays. Thanks to Brian Burke for stopping by again. Thanks to Jonny Lazarus, MC in the wedding. Oh, very good. Again, if you're doing the same, don't peak early. Just relax. Marathon, not a sprint. You don't have to do every shot that gets presented to you, okay? Trust me, I've made that mistake. Don't make that mistake. But thanks to Jonny Lazarus for stopping by. Thanks to everybody in the chat, as always. Thanks to everybody watching live on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform. Maybe you're watching on Twitter, X, Instagram, wherever. Thanks so much for tuning in. Much appreciated. We might be on the road, so pay attention to our socials to find out where for the second round, and it may be soon. We'll see. In the meantime, thanks as always for watching. Thanks for listening. This ends my broadcast day and broadcast week. Back with you Monday, 3 o'clock Eastern for the sheet. Monday morning, if Johnny's sobered up by then. Morning Cup of Hockey, Jonny Lazarus and Colby Cohen, 9 o'clock Eastern, DFO live at noon, and then the sheet at 3 o'clock. Thanks so much as always. Broadcast is over. Enjoy the rest of your day/night. Enjoy Winnipeg and St. Louis, Game 6. Talk to you Monday. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Jonny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.